And we are back. The New York City Council approved the City of Yes housing plan, which is a $5 billion initiative aimed at creating over 80,000 new homes to address the city's housing crisis. And while this ambitious plan has been hailed as a significant step forward, it's also sparked discussion about the equity and unique needs of different neighborhoods. Join me now, City Council member of District 16. We've got Althea Stevens, and thank you, Councilmember Stevens, for joining us.
Well, good afternoon, and thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited about being here.
Glad to have you back again. And yeah, when we talk about this here, obviously a major concern when we talk about, this investment that's made in housing, but all investment isn't always good investment. Is that true?
Listen, I was one of the people who it took a while for them to get me to a yes on that proposal because I am a true believer of District 16 has done their fair share of building affordable housing. We are number 6 in the city on the amount of units that's been built in the last couple of years around affordable housing, and other districts have not. And so this plan was sold to us around equity, and then there were things that was put in it that did not feel that way. But because of my negotiations, I was able to secure some major wins from my district, which I'm really proud of, and really think the community can benefit from. One of the things I was able to get is the city's committed to doing a study for a ferry on Harlem River Drive. This is something that people in my district and people in the West Bronx have been advocating for a number of years. And so this is the first step of us getting a ferry. I was also able to secure over $48 million for parks in my district. Also, the city committed to do some home ownership with some of the projects that are coming down in the pipeline. So for me, it was about how do I make sure that we also get wins out of this and make sure that the people in my district are able to walk away with some tangible goods because we deserve it.
Yeah, we've been talking about ferry for a long time in the borough of the Bronx, and obviously you've brought this one step closer to reality. How optimistic are you on the ferry situation?
I mean, honestly, I'm super optimistic. I've been talking about this since I got into office because in the Bronx, we only have one ferry port, which is to me is unacceptable, especially when we have so many places of the Bronx that are this would be another option for people to come in to get in and from their homes in a safe way. And there's no talks about getting expanding train lines in the Bronx or even expanding bus lines. So to me, having a ferry, I think it would be a great amenity. Really excited about that. And again, we're one step closer. Like I said, the study is the first phase that it takes to get a ferry line to be put on this side of the Bronx.
Yeah. Let me go back to housing for a minute. I want to talk about the City of Yes housing plan and, the importance of it. Talk to me about it.
Yeah, I mean, like I said before, this plan, it took me a while to get to it. We've been building affordable housing in my district before my predecessor left. They did the Jerome Avenue redistricting. So we were building up a lot. I don't have a lot of public land left because there's been so much building. So for me, I understand this idea around we need to build more housing stocks, but we really need to be targeting some of these areas that are not as dense and who have not done any building. There's parts of the city that has not built in years and has not built one unit of affordable housing. And to me, that's really unacceptable because certain communities cannot carry the burden.
Right. So how do we get to a place of equity? Because I think that's really what the major thing is, right? We want to see equity when it comes to housing, and how do we go about that?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I proposed when we were at the very beginning of negotiations of that, like we should have had a pause on areas that have been building a lot of housing, and then started in districts that have not, and started there, and then worked our way back, right? Because even in this plan, it doesn't stop people from coming into the district and building more and making dense districts even more dense. It just allowed them to go into new spaces and took away some of the like technical pieces and building up a little bit higher. But I think that we also still need to kind of force some places who don't want their community to change or they say things they don't want certain people in their community. I think that we still need to put a lot more pressure and actually push more to get those things done.
Yeah. And I mean, I've always said that there is no question that New York City is definitely an overpopulated place. And we all know that, right? But then when he talks about housing, you get to watch all this housing that's being developed. But while you're watching the housing that's being developed, the question is who's going in it? And
Right.
how are we going to be able to navigate that? And we do know in the Bronx, there's a lot of talk about gentrification. And no equity. So, from your perspective, are you happy with what you're seeing by way of this balance between new housing that's coming, and at the same time also ensuring that the rights and privileges of those who've been here a long time are not forsaken in it?
Well, listen, my first priority is always Bronx residents and District 16 residents above everything, right? And so for me, it's always thinking about what does our community need. And so for me, I've been really pushing back on this idea that the only thing we need is extremely low income, because we have people in my district who are also being priced out. We forget that sometimes people get, new certificates, or they get college degrees, or they have families, and their income does go up. And so we need to also be looking at, like, what does affordable mean for different tiers of people? And so that's been something I've been really pushing in our district around. Like, I want people who go away to college to be able to come back to the community and have nice places to live, have nice things here as well. But in addition to as we are building up, we also need to be thinking about what does the economic development in that community looks like, right? You can build housing, but also, do we have daycares? Do we have schools to support that? Do we have laundromats? Do we have the other, medical facilities? Do we have the necessities to ensure that people can thrive in this community and don't have to leave to get bare necessities? And so that's another thing that I think that's really been missing out of this conversation.
I've often heard the conversation about this, and it kind of gets me going, if you will. I don't understand how we talk about economic development and how the affordable housing crisis and how we need to continue to build, and yes, you do need to build for those who are poor and don't and are financially challenged. However, we do also understand this is the success and the revitalization of a community comes when you also have middle class housing, when you have the ability to bring people to the forefront who can earn a living and a substantial living and have them in a neighborhood that does something for the community. And while there is this push for low-income housing, and there should always be a push for
Absolutely.
low-income housing, there also has to be a push for this mixed, community, because it's the mixed community that's also going to help to develop the community that's going to be sustainable for a minute. So
You are speaking my language, and we are both on the same page, but sometimes that get lost in the conversation. And even in this conversation, we're talking about renters. We're not even talking about homeowners.
right.
That has been pushed to the back, which I'm just like, that is unacceptable, which is why in the negotiations I was advocating and saying that we need home ownership in my district. People need to have those opportunities. When we're looking at people leaving the city, and specifically Black families who have left the city, we've lost 20% of the population in New York City, Black families. It's because they don't have opportunities for home ownership, and we have to figure out what does that look like. And so I was really pushing back, because it was really about, how do we walk and chew gum? Yes, we need renters, and we need people who might want to rent, but we also need people who want to have home ownership opportunities. And the city's not talking about that at all. And so I'm really grateful for my colleagues who also was bringing home ownership into this conversation during the City of Yes process.
Yeah. And what's that conversation been like? Because I think sometimes it seems like it's fallen on deaf ears. We have to talk. I mean, we definitely have to bring that to the forefront. I think Americans in New York City, and particularly New Yorkers, should have the opportunity to have a home, to own a home. You shouldn't have to move to Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina to accomplish, quote unquote, the American dream, particularly when you've been born and raised here.
Absolutely. And this is something that me and my colleagues have all been fighting for. Last year, the Progressive Caucus, we were able to get money put into the Open Doors, um, to the Open Doors program, which would allow for more developers to build co-ops and condos throughout the city. We've also been, like, just even through City of Yes, we were the ones talking about home ownership and how do those opportunities be a part of it as well. Myself and a group of other colleagues who are part of the BLAC subcommittee called Black, which is Black city local electeds who came together to put together a Black agenda, went to Albany this past week to talk to the governor about what are the options for homeowners, how do we keep people in their homes, and had a really productive conversation, because we understand that home ownership is a fundamental part of the American dream that we're just not talking about in New York City.
So, what is the response that you get back from people when you have this?
So the response is, the people are really open, but I think sometimes we also have to push on the developers too. So I know specifically for me in my district, anytime developers are coming to talk to me, that is always my question. How do we have home ownership? And like, yes, I love that you're doing 150 units, but how many of those can you set aside for home ownership? And so also working with HPD to actually promote that as well, and like really get the term sheets together for the open doors policy so that developers can start using it, because we've also seen that the HPD has been stalling on getting those term sheets out.
Yeah. Walk me a little bit through your district because let's go through District 16 for a minute because when I think about, the housing burdens, talk to me about District 16 and you guys have been disproportionately affected.
Yeah, we've absolutely been disproportionately affected. I mean, we have one of the highest number of shelters in the city. And for us, it's thinking about how do we get more resources to those individuals who need the support. We also, when we think about like home ownership, we have some home ownership. Don't get me wrong, but we absolutely need more to continue, like you said before, to help build thriving communities around businesses and things like that. But we've been building affordable housing. Like I said, we're number 6 in the city on the number of units that have been built in the last couple of years. We've been building, and we're going to continue to build. But we want good developers who are coming in here with good faith, who wants to build, not just studios. We also want to get more family units, because the city's also been pushing studios. We really want to see more family units for those bigger families and generational families, so that people can live comfortably.
Yeah. So you talked a little bit about a vision for a ferry. I want to talk about the vision for a STEM center and the importance of that. And I know that's near and dear to your heart as well. Having science, technology, electronics, math, having that right there in your neighborhood. What would a STEM center mean for you?
Well, that was another, and thank you for bringing that up, because that was actually another win that we got in the City of Yes negotiations. The city did promise to identify space so we could have a STEM center. So I'm really excited about that. I'm always trying to find ways so that we can have proactive things for our young people to do in our community. And it's really important. We know that our young people, when they're exposed to things, they thrive, but we have to make sure that they have access. And so, really excited about the partners that we'll be able to partner with. I know BioBus, they've been doing great work in the district, and they've been you know, really going through the community on their bus doing these activities. So possibly partnering with them and some other folks who are interested. But like, I'm really excited that we'll be able to have a state of the art STEM center in our district for young people to come and thrive, and also just not young people, right? I think that this facility needs to be opened up to everyone, because I think everyone can benefit from it. Because let me tell you, sometimes I'm not the best at technology myself.
Yeah. I mean, listen, we all can use we all can use a little improvement, masterclass, the whole 9 yards. Don't worry, you're not by yourself on this one here.
Sometimes I'm struggling with my iPhone, so I don't know.
Listen, that's most people. We're not gonna tell
I'm
everybody.
okay. I'm not ashamed.
You're not by yourself. Don't worry about it. But let's talk about community resources because I think that's the biggest challenge, right? When you talk about improving a community, having those resources available, and you're doing that fight. You're doing that fight for at the state level, federal level to make sure the resources are coming in. Now, if I'm a business owner, if I'm a person that's out there in your community saying, listen, I want to improve my neighborhood, I want to improve my business, what resources and how can a person be able to tap in to you as their legislative leader to be able to access that?
Well, one of the things I tell people all the time, like, people don't realize how they should use their elected officials. And your first stop, a lot of the times, should be your council member's office. And I say this to everyone in my district. If you start with us, even if we can't help you, we probably can point you in the right direction to get you the help. And even with like local business, SBS, small businesses, um, agency that we have in New York, they have so many resources. We actually did a walkthrough of our commercial corridor with the commissioner of SBS this over the summer, who really was just going around to businesses telling them the different resources that they have, the different products that they can get from them, and how they can partner to get supports. And so, especially business owners who are looking to do business in the Bronx and in District 16, please reach out to your local council member. We can absolutely connect you with SBF, and they can also get you started around like whether it's inspections or certifications or whatever you need. And it's really a good tool and resource, but not a lot of people know about it.
So for yourself, obviously the work goes on. We're in the budget season right now, and things are going full speed ahead. Um, Give me where you are in terms of budget, projection, and then Trump presidency.
Well, where you want me to start? I'm gonna start on our side, right?
Okay.
Honestly, I don't see this being that big of a fight this year. The mayor already released his executive budget. I'm the chair of Children and Youth Services, so that's really my well house where I like try to stay and dig in. And he restored a lot of youth programs. Nothing is being cut. Everything is staying pretty still for right now. He even one thing that I've been fighting for the last 3 years have been an additional 100 beds for homeless runaway youth that no one ever wants to talk about. But he, put the additional 100 beds in the budget, in the executive budget, so I don't have to fight for that. And so I actually think that we're actually off to a good start for budget season as far as what he laid out in the executive budget. Obviously, there are going to be things that we're gonna go back and forth on some of the dancing around the budget. But I do think that from the executive budget, what he laid out, things looked pretty decent. And I think we also just have to always remember we are in trying times. Our new president has been very clear about his plan and what was going to happen, and we're seeing it in real time right now, right? When he was on the campaign trail saying that on day one they were going to start mass deportations. We had a raid in my district very recently where people were pulled out their homes in the early morning hours, and people are scared. We have families who are scared. I had parents come to my office and say that they're not taking their kids to school because they're afraid of ICE. And so I think it's about how we make sure that we're keeping people safe. We're giving them the resources that they need. We're also giving them the information that's going to keep them safe. Because it is very trying times.
It is very trying times, and obviously, I know the pulse of the community is definitely that of anxiety and that of challenge. How do you give people the assurance as the legislator in the midst of all these trying times that we're feeling politically?
I mean, honestly, I'm trying to give myself reassurance, right? Because sometimes I think people do think that we have a magic wand and we can just fix all the things. And I'm in it with them. My district is comprised of a lot of immigrant populations. And for me, it's thinking about how do we keep each other safe? How do we hold each other accountable? And also, I want us to get to a place where we're not being reactionary. How are we planning, right? I think the difference between when we're thinking about Republicans and Democrats, the Republicans have been planning for a very long time. When you're looking at Project 2025, that was a 900-page document, which was very methodical about what their plans were, which is why even now I'm telling people like they told us their plans, so we just got to figure it out. But how do we use the next not only month and 6 months and 4 years to start making a plan about what we want to see and what we want to deliver for our community?
Yeah, and as lawmakers, I know obviously you're challenged because you represent your people. You're trying to get the best that you can in terms of resources, and then at the same time, you're trying to get the best that you can. You're trying to sustain what you have, and then the hope that possibly to be able to get more. Given the fact that we're hearing all of these cuts and these proposed cuts and these executive orders, how optimistic are you for programs in your district, given the fact of where we are under Trump presidency?
I, I'm going to be honest. I think that there's two folds to it. One, I think that in these moments is when people actually are going to show up because elections have real consequences. And I think that there was a lot going on and there was a lot at stake. And I don't think people really believe the elements that were actually going to come out, right? And so I was clear that I knew what he did before and understood what he was going to do again if he got another chance. But I think that making the real connection of like, we do not have the option to sit on the sidelines and not be involved, right? Even in my district, we have low voter turnout, right? This is going to affect your everyday life. And so for me, it's also thinking about how do we use this moment as a teachable moment? And then also, how do we use this moment to galvanize and really energize people in community to understand that we can no longer be on the sidelines. You need to get in this fight. And I think because it's going to be so extreme, I have hope. Not only are we going to all fight together, but our young people are going to lead the way in this fight.
There's a tremendous amount of voter apathy that really went into the polls this last election, not just locally, but nationwide. With all that's going on, are you optimistic? Because you say hoping that more people come out, more people become active, And you don't want the impetus to be that you've dropped down to -20 in order to get you out to the poll. You want that to be an everyday thing, that we're getting people out and we're moving people out. But given what we're seeing, the trajectory that it looks like we know that we're heading into, are you optimistic that people will say, hey, you know what, I'll exercise this right, not just because it's the right thing to do, but also because people died for it and there's some power behind this?
Absolutely. I hope all of those things come out of it. That's what I'm optimistic about. I feel like people will know, like, because I think, a lot of times people become complacent and say, like, well, how does the government affect me? I've had multiple debates with community members and folks across this district and city who are like, the government doesn't affect me. And in real time, we are seeing in a matter of days how the government affects your everyday life, right? When we're talking about people who are being rounded up and deported, when we're talking about, you know, people not being able to get tuition because of this freeze that was an executive order, and now they're pulling back on it. Like, these things are affecting people in real time. The WIC program being up for grabs, and SNAP and taking Title I away from school so young people can't have free school lunch. Like, these are real things, and so my hope is not only that people turn out and start not only voting at the federal level but at the local level, because all politics is local. And really, the politics at the local level dictates what happens at the federal government. And there was a lot of discord in at the local level that people just kind of ignored, right? When we're thinking about who you're voting for your council members, your state electeds, those are a lot of policies that dictate what's going to be going on at the federal government. And they were testing these things out in certain cities and certain places, and people weren't paying attention. So we don't have the option or the luxury not to be involved at this point.
Yeah, and I think there's something to be said for participation, that we need to be involved, but we need to be involved long before we get to that place of the polls, because what we're dealing with right now is this crucial, and it takes all hands on deck to be able to do that. I got only a few minutes left, but before we go, I do want to get you an opportunity to talk about what you're excited and as far as what's upcoming and what we can be looking for on the calendar in your area.
Yeah, I mean, we always are trying to do a lot of family fun events. I know coming up in February, we're going to have a silent disco. It's going to be an intergenerational disco where our youth advisory board is planning with our senior advisory board, and we're going to have community members come out. There's going to be different DJs, and it's going to be a silent disco. That's going to be at the Wendell T. Foster Community Center on Jerome Avenue. So we have that event coming up. Also, in February, 2 years ago, I passed Black Girl Magic. So every year on February 15th, the city recognizes that day as Black Girl Magic Day. So we're going to be doing an event in the chambers where we're going to be celebrating the work and the inspiration of Black women across the city. So we're always excited about that. And so, everyone come out to the chambers on February 13th and celebrate Black women. You don't have to be a woman. We take men who get it as well, and all women across the city. But we really just want to recognize the hard work of Black women and the things and sacrifices they continue to do, even when they're not being protected or feeling loved.
Yeah, it's a lot going on through the course of February as we talk about Black History Month being in full effect and a full calendar. For yourself, how are you managing this calendar and getting around, given the fact there's so many things happening in your area, particularly almost every weekend throughout the course of the week?
Listen, I know I do a lot, but I have an amazing team who always supports me. So if I can't go, someone from my team always is able to step in. But honestly, I try to get to as many events and reach as many people as possible, because that's the work that they sent me to do. I tell people all the time, I'm a representative, which means that I need to meet and talk with as many people as possible so that I know how you feel. I know what you want me to do, so I know how to make the right decisions for our community.
Yeah, yeah. And as I get ready to wrap this up with you talking about what's happening coming down the future, obviously we're knowing as far as economics are concerned, things are really tough. Any optimism about jobs?
Yeah, I mean, workforce development has been one of the things that have been at the top of my agenda since I got here, and thinking about how are we supporting organizations that do workforce development and not just get people jobs, but also how do we get people to elevate in the jobs that they have? How do we get them new skills so that they can get new jobs? And also, too, how are we developing the workforce of young people? And so I'm also thinking about how do we also attract more businesses to be in the Bronx, because that's another thing that's really important around like how we have businesses in the Bronx so people can have jobs in their community and they don't have to leave. And so that's something that I myself have been working with the Bronx delegation, our Bronx borough president, because it's something that we all deem very important.
Yeah, and it's a lot that's out there. I mean, a lot that's contend with. We've got jobs, we got the economy, we got homelessness, we got a whole lot of stuff.
Mental health.
We got a ferry that's coming. We got a ferry that's
I'm
coming.
working on it. I'm working on it. I listen. I My goal is to at least have it in the works before I leave this seat,
Really?
because I don't see it happening while I'm here, but like it should be in the works while before I leave, so that my predecessor can get this across the finish line.
And we could call it like the Althea Stevens.
I
Yeah,
mean,
right. They name
I
it.
would love that.
Look. Let me
Listen,
let me.
you said I did it.
There it is. I'm put it out there in the atmosphere. There it is. Thank you for the work that you're doing. Obviously, it's great work, and a lot that goes on in behind the scenes and in front of the scenes. So thank you for being on the front lines.
Thank you so much for having me. And anytime, I'm always available. You call, I'll show up.
Yep, we got to get you back in the studio. How about that? So
Absolutely. We said that last time. Next
we
time
did.
I'm in the studio.
So this is twice now, right?
Yep.
So you know what happens on the third time?
I'll be in the studio.
See, that's fine. We here. All right.
All right. Have a good one.
Have a good one. Take care.